Hi there. My name's Jen Ellis, and I'm the Lunch and Learn Coordinator for PMI WIC. And thank you for joining us online for our first time ever Lunch and Learn online, at least in my time as Lunch and Learn Coordinator. I think this is the first online one. So thank you all for registering. I don't need to do a lot of thank yous to Tech Systems other than thank you for all of the lunches and room reservations of the past, but I do really want to thank Shelby Davis for helping us get here. This was a big deal. She's the VP of Communications, and we went through a lot of work. She went through a lot of work to make this happen today, so I really want to say thank you to her. And to George as well, who's our person for reservations in the past, but I do really want to thank Shelby Davis. Oh, I'm echoing. And Reme, am I echoing?
Yes.
A lot of work she went through.
It's either you or George. George has two computers.
Well, I just have one computer. Oh wait, there. It's not doing it now.
Yeah, I think it was George.
Okay. Sorry about that. You get the joys of navigating this with us today. I do have a slide in the handouts that shows people how to get the PDU credits. If you're wondering how to do that, if you go to pmi.org, it's 1.5 credits, and it's at your discretion of whether you choose strategic, technical, or leadership. And you will be getting a copy of the slides when we're done. Because you registered, we know how to email it to you. Let's see, I'm just looking through my notes here. We are still looking for speakers after the summer. As you well know, we take breaks in July and August. So, or excuse me, yeah, July and August, and September through December, we are still looking for speakers. We do have a couple in line, maybe not specific dates, but we are looking for people to come forward with that. And now I
talk about Q&A.
Oh yeah, thank you. You guys, the way it's set up, you're on mute because of the platform that we chose, and we actually went through a lot of research to figure out which one to use. But you do have access to Q&A and chatting, and we do have someone that will be helping with that today. I'm kind of online here with Reme, but someone else is helping with the Q&A and chat. All right, Reme, thank you for reminding me that. And then I was trying to sneak back to my intro. There we go. So I'm going to intro Reme. Reme is a certified project management professional, a professional Scrum Master, has a writing in the sciences certification from Stanford, and holds a marketing MBA from Golden Gate University. He is a senior IT project manager at St. Luke's Health System, a serial entrepreneur, and our PMI WIC education liaison. So please welcome Reme Pullicar. Thank you.
The Curious Entrepreneur. Entrepreneur's Guide on Launching and Growing a Business Series. An entrepreneur.
Okay, George, you need to switch.
Looking for that.
Okay, you should be good to go.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead, Reme.
Perfect. George, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Welcome, everybody. Jen, thank you so much for the introduction. Really appreciate that. I've been with PMI for several years now and really appreciate the organization, the support, all that PMI local chapter does for us as project managers. I've noticed over the years we have a lot of people who have interest in project management. They come to PMI, some of the meetings, begin getting their feet wet. Many people go on to pursue certification, and again, there's a great network and support system in PMI, and specifically in our chapter. So really appreciate all of the leadership and the support that this chapter offers to the community. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present today. I recognize again that based on the way that we're approaching this, the Q&A process will require you to input a question into the question box. George will help us moderate that, and he'll send me questions and let me know that there's something that's being asked or something that's being contributed. And then what I'll try to do is go ahead and just read those contributions. This presentation was originally developed for Startup Treasure Valley. I've since revised it just this month for this particular presentation. And so with Startup Treasure Valley, as you may know, that focuses a lot on new business development. It focuses on new product development. It focuses on really turning Idaho into a business gestator and really helping us as a community build out, again, new businesses and new opportunities. So really appreciate what we do as a community. This particular presentation, Customer-Driven Design, is again focused a little bit on products and on services. But as we go through it, I think that you'll be able to find there are several areas where the concepts that we talk about have direct application to so many different parts of what we do in business, so many different parts of what we do as project managers or business analysts, etc. So hopefully you'll find this helpful to you. Again, please engage with me. So there will be places where I ask for you to reply. And again, just use your question box to try to participate in that. And hopefully, again, we can still have some good interaction, even though you can't vocalize your thoughts. So the subtitle on here is Building What You Can Sell and Selling What You Can Strike Out, Build. I just wanted to kind of pose that as a question. Why would the word can in the second half of that sentence be struck out? And really, that's the meat of this discussion. As we look at this next slide, kind of leading in, what do all of the following have in common? We have fast-paced, I'm not going to read them all, social networking, opinions, customer service, gross revenues. What do all these things have in common? Just contemplate that for a moment. Please, again, use your question box if you have any ideas about what that might be. And George, I'm not exactly sure what I'll see if somebody puts something in there. I'll go to the next slide. I'd love to have somebody test it though. If somebody could just type something in there, that way we'll know what we're doing.
Hi, Remy, where are you? Okay.
Okay, I've gone ahead and moved to the next slide. But what they all have in common is that they all relate to how happy your customers are. Well, who are your customers? So as we contemplate again, who do you work with? Who do you basically serve? Who are your customers? Every one of us has a customer. So no matter what your product or your service is or what it is that you do, we all have a customer. As a project manager, I find many times that my customers are, again, those stakeholders. Typically, my largest stakeholders are those who have initiated the project, they've provided the funding, they have provided the overall scope. Those are my customers. But on the other end of that, I also see all of the users, the other stakeholders of the eventual system that we put in place as being customers as well. And so I'm sure that whether you are, again, a manager, even in HR, for example, you have customers as well. If you are a customer service representative, then clearly you have customers. So it really doesn't matter what your role is. Somewhere along the line, you're providing either a product or a service to somebody, and all of those people are your customers. And again, so my hope is that as we go through this, we'll see that this presentation has applicability to wherever you might whatever you might be doing. So what makes customers unhappy? Let's talk about that first. I want to first get into, again, if we want to develop and deliver a product or a service, we really want to have an understanding of why we might fail, and having that caution or that understanding, that foundation of what might cause us to fail will help us to be better prepared and build, again, a firm foundation upon which we can move forward and find success. Joan Schneider and Julie Hall in the Harvard Business Review postulated that there are 5 primary reasons why products, and I'll say services as well, fail in the market. The first one that they talk about is that a company cannot support fast growth. I've got an example of each one of these particular items. And again, if you go to the Harvard Business Review, that is a link. All of these are links within your presentation. So when you look at this later, you can click that. The first one is, again, the mosquito magnet. The mosquito magnet was a product, and it still exists today, where an American biophysicist, he had discovered and decided that we could utilize carbon dioxide as a lure for mosquitoes. And so he developed a device that leveraged the fact that, again, mosquitoes actually are drawn to carbon dioxide. And so he developed a device that would generate carbon dioxide. The mosquitoes would be lured into the device, and then they would be captured inside of that device. It happened that when he developed that product, West Nile was a huge issue. And so you can imagine this product became very, very popular. As a matter of fact, they were generating about $70 million a year in revenue based on this product alone. With that level of customer reaction, and again, this product being something that people really wanted, they found that their production in Rhode Island kind of lagged. And they thought about, as a company, well, how do we resolve this? We could only build so many. What are we going to do about this? And so what they decided to do was move their manufacturing from Rhode Island to China. When they did that, what they found was that they lost control of quality. And ultimately, because of the quality issues that they experienced, that company that was selling, again, 70 million a year in a product turned around and was sold later for $6 million. Again, that's an example specifically where this company, they could not support the level of growth that they had, and they made a bad decision, unfortunately, on what they did to try to resolve that. The next one that they point out is that products fall short of claims and get bashed in the market. Does anybody remember Microsoft Vista? Microsoft Vista was launched with a $500 million marketing campaign. It was touted to be the OS, the operating system, that would ultimately replace all other OSs. And it was hoped that it would require 50% of market conversion. What that means is not all the people that were already using Microsoft products and obviously Windows. Conversion means everyone who was using an Apple product, everyone who was using a Unix product, etc., that they would literally get 50% of that market to dump the other OSs that they were using and come to Microsoft. You and I both know that that did not happen. It flopped badly. Why? It's because it wasn't as stable. It had security issues. The interface didn't live up to all the hype. And ultimately, because of all the claims that they had made and the failure to deliver on those claims, Microsoft Vista literally tanked. The third reason that they point out is that new products exist in what they call product limbo, somewhere between products that people actually want and products clearly that people don't want at all. And Coke C2 is one of those examples. So if you remember, there was a lot of health fads going on back at this time when Coke introduced this new product. And what their analysis and some smart thinking on their end, they decided that what men really wanted was a soda that was half the calories. And so they came out with this new product that they thought would address that. They were basically following a fad. And ultimately what happened was they found that people didn't like the taste. And so after, again, putting millions of dollars into marketing, millions of dollars into development and distribution, etc., after a very, very quick turnaround, they shut off Coke 2. It just went away. The fourth reason that products or services fail, according to Joan and Julie, is if the product defines a new product category that requires substantial consumer education, and then frankly just doesn't get the level of education that's required. They don't produce what's appropriate in the sense of education. Febreze, and again, Febreze is still around. I use it around my home, but they came out with a product called Sense Stories. Don't even know how to say it. Sense Stories. And the product actually came to the consumer in what looked like a CD. So you would plug in this little device into your wall. It had what looked like a micro CD player. And then as the disc would turn, it would, again, send out the Febreze scent and that kind of thing. The problem was that consumers were very confused by it. They looked at it and thought, well, what is this thing? Is it supposed to play music? Does it play music and combine that music with smells? And without that additional education, again, consumers are just very confused, and that product, again, was taken off the market. The fifth item that they, or fifth reason that they point out is that sometimes a product is revolutionary and there's just simply no market for it. I think that this particular example, the Segway, probably failed on a couple of points, probably 4 and 5 together. But if you remember, the Segway was hyped a whole year before it was actually introduced to the market. So they started this pre-marketing hype around Segway, and they built up all this hype and excitement about this new product that was literally going to replace cars. They anticipated that they would sell 10,000 units a month of the Segway. After 5 years, they'd only sold 24,000 units. The reason predominantly was, number one, a Segway really could not replace a car. And number two, it was really too expensive at $5,000 for what was essentially a fancy scooter. And so seriously missed the mark on a couple different areas. I would add that another potential reason why products or services fail is that sometimes products just too narrowly focus on one specific area. The market is literally too small, or that the company simply fails miserably in the area of customer service. So you could have a really awesome product and just get killed from the standpoint that you don't provide customer service. And to me, it feels like that really customer service and customer interaction is that other 80% of what's important. So what is customer-driven design? What am I really getting to? Well, customer-driven design is a customer-focused mindset that attempts to place a customer at the center of product and service design. How do successful companies, developers, project teams overcome obstacles, the ones that we just talked about? Well, more often than not, the answer is customer-driven design. Design is not limited to what's being sold, however. The whole company experience and everything it does should be driven by a solid customer focus. It begins and grows within the earliest steps of business creation and addresses such questions as, how accessible will our company be? So as a CEO of a company, do I want my customers to be able to reach out to me? Do I put my email address, and granted, it's probably not my primary email address, but do I have an email address where people can reach out to me directly? What does my Salesforce do? How accessible are they? How about, again, support and design, etc.? How will research, development, testing, packaging, marketing, and return on ad placement demonstrate a strong customer focus? These are all questions that I think help us determine and really get a sense for what our company culture is going to be around this. One of the things that as we continue down this discussion, again, I want to keep tying this back to not all of us are starting a new company, not all of us are launching a new product, but whatever it is we are working on, we can adopt these mentalities. Ultimately, this third bullet point, how will we ultimately learn about and integrate what people really want into our products or our service, or again, what we deliver to our customers? You can see at the bottom of that slide, the build it, measure it, learn from it. We're going to get into that just a little bit more with this next slide. I'm not seeing any questions, but again, don't hesitate. I believe that a part of what we really need to do is adopt a customer-driven mindset. That customer-driven design is really all around having a mindset that says, I want to listen to my customer. I want to have my listening ears on at all times. And it's really a question of culture. Not all companies really have that culture. And so sometimes it's really up to each of us individually to be an agent for that change. And so kind of rhetorically, I'm going to ask, are you a listener? Unfortunately, in this particular environment, the way that we're working right now as again, more of a podcast than an interactive experience, it's hard for you to be anything but a listener, right? You're probably feeling a little bit hampered, not being able to turn around and ask a question. But we all know that good listening requires that we do what? That we become an active listener. And an active listener provides visual cues. They use their hands. They raise an eyebrow, right? They smile, they frown, right? There are nonverbal cues, but then there are, of course, verbal cues where we say, uh-huh, or we ask a question. Are you a good listener? Well, what do you mean by that, Reme? Well, are you an active listener, right? So again, having that opportunity to ask questions is really a part of that being a good listener. I'd kind of like to ask a question now. I'm going to go through these 4 points, these 4 bullet points, but would you do me a favor and type into the question box the following response? Can you share briefly an example of when listening made a difference for you, whether on a project, maybe in a relationship, maybe with your boss, maybe during an annual review, maybe dealing with a customer? Just 1 or 2 of you. And again, we don't know which of the 42 of you that are listening are going to respond. So go ahead and please put in an example in there why, how that might, an experience that you've had, while I go on and talk about these 4 items. So I'd really appreciate it if you could do that. There's basically 4 steps that I want to lead us down the path of understanding. If we have a customer-driven mindset, if we have this culture of listening, step 1 is ask questions and ask them often, and then listen. Step 2, ask more questions and then integrate. Step 3, ask more questions and then improve. And then number 4, rinse and repeat. So as we look down here at this, again, this graphic, you can see the first arrow in yellow is listen. Again, it's just a reiteration of the 4 above, but listen. Again, what's that mean? Active listening. We're going to go into a little bit more detail about that in just a moment. Integrate. Well, what does that mean? Again, we'll go into more detail in a moment. But integrating means integrating questioning into your processes. And then the next one is improving. And what that means is taking what you've heard, taking the feedback that you're getting, and then building or baking that into your solution, building or baking that into what you're building. So again, that's the direction that we're going in.
Okay, Reme, we've got a couple of good questions that have come in.
Awesome.
One is from Brandon Broadhead. There's one challenge we can continuously come up on in our business is really understanding who all of our customers are, as they are generally behind multiple layers. Do you have a recommended process for identifying and addressing all of the customers?
So that's a great question. I'm going to restate it. I'm not sure that everybody can hear George. So the question is, at this particular person's company, they have so many layers of customers. The question is fundamentally, how do we identify all of those customers? That's a great question. Is there a methodology or a tool that I could lead you towards that might help you with that? One of the best practices, and we'll talk more about it, is really going through a couple of things. One is the 5 whys, and we'll get to there. But another one is really going through a stakeholder analysis and going through a RACI diagram. It's something that we do commonly with our projects, but again, you can do it on whatever it is, whatever aspect you are particularly involved in. So again, if you're a project manager, your RACI diagram is going to look one way. If you're a customer service agent, your RACI diagram is going to look another way. And ideally, you can go through a process of, again, identifying who your stakeholders are. I'm going to lean a little bit on another process that you may or may not be familiar with. So within the Agile environment, and some of us, again, are more waterfall driven, some of us are Agile or Scrum driven. Now, again, Scrum is one methodology within the Agile framework, but within Agile, one of the things that we like to do is come up with user stories, and user stories help us define what our user requirements are. You can reverse engineer that to some degree. One of the things that we typically do when we go through that process of identifying what our customer requirements are is that we first look at who are our actual customers. So we identify who those people are. And we typically do that by, again, looking at what roles do they play. And then as we look at what roles they play, we, again, put some flesh on that. So as an example, again, I work with St. Luke's Hospital. So if I were to say that one of my stakeholders is a doctor, then I would want to, again, identify that person as number one being a doctor, but number two, what area or specialty does he work in? So let's say that in this particular case, he's a brain surgeon. So I've got a doctor who's a brain surgeon. Now I need to better understand, okay, where does he work? Is he in a clinic? Does he do surgery? Again, I can break that down. And now as I look at that, again, in this particular case, I'm talking about reverse engineering. Normally I would go directly to that doctor now. I'd say, okay, we've identified you as a stakeholder. And I would interview him and say, okay, as a doctor, could you help me understand your workflows? Help me understand what your needs are. And then we would phrase that into a sentence that is 3 segments. As a brain surgeon at St. Luke's, I need to, whatever it is he needs to do, so that I can. So it's that 3-part sentence, right, that we identify his needs. Well, I think I can kind of reverse engineer some of that. So let's say that, again, I'm selling cars and I'm a used car salesman and I've got a little teeny lot down the street. So I'm going to look at that and say, okay, who are all my customers? Well, one customer that I'm going to have obviously is how do I do my advertising? Well, my advertising is through the yellow pages, my advertising is through radio, my advertising is through Facebook, whatever it is. Well, each of those becomes one of my stakeholders. So I could generically say that Facebook is a stakeholder. Well, what do they need? Well, as Facebook, I need to be able to share about your car lot so that I can drive traffic, to your car lot. So I'm going to define that, and now I'm going to try to figure out, well, how do I address that? How do I serve that? Now I'm going to drop down in my next stakeholder. I'm going to say is that my actual customer, people that actually are shopping for cars. And so I'm going to look at that. And I might want to segment that as well. And I might want to segment that into a person who shops for cars using social media they might have a different need than a person who shops for cars using the newspaper, right? And so I might segment those different stakeholders. And again, try to go through that process of saying, what is it they need specifically? As a car shopper who uses a newspaper, I need to be able to find cars that interest me so that I can contact you and buy it, right? So that's the kind of process that I might go through. I don't know if that helps or not, but that's an approach that, again, I would probably take.
Remy, I was going to add in, I don't know if everybody can hear me at this point, but we have 5 or 6 folks who have added their comments, not necessarily questions, but in support of the things that you are saying. Comments like, I've calmed down customers by actively listening to them. Another one, having difficulty building trust with a key stakeholder and learned that he was having some challenges with his mother's health. And by actively listening and coming back and asking about the health of his mother, really helped to improve the conversation and kind of turn things around. And I think one that I liked here as well is experiences, who was this, Matthew Lee had in terms of listening with a customer. They said we weren't listening to them. And we tried surveys, emails, status updates, but still we weren't listening. So I finally asked, what do we need to do to show you that we are listening? And it turns out they wanted to have daily stand-ups. So in support of your idea, find out what it takes for somebody else to feel like you're listening. And that was a great comment.
Perfect. Could somebody very quickly respond and let us know if you can hear George? I don't want to have to repeat everything George says.
I've got a comment coming through. They can. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, I really appreciate those 3 examples are great examples again of where adopting that mindset of listening has helped you. Clearly, listening is a key skill that everybody needs to have. And when it comes to, again, providing a service or a product and making sure that you invest your money in the right area, it's a key component of how every business should run. I'm going to change slides and kind of postulate this question, and it's rhetorical. Do people really give their input? So, I mean, if you're asking questions, right, do people really respond? I mean, there's nothing to listen to if they don't. Well, the answer is yes, they do. It's just not always in the channel that you hope it would be. For example, sometimes people rant on Facebook or Reddit, right? And that's not really what you're asking for. For example, Starbucks has been better than most companies actually of developing a culture of customer-driven relationships, right from the barista and right up the chain, right? They've also developed a culture where their social views are kind of shared social views, where their view of the world, so to speak, is somewhat shared by their clientele, and they have this, again, relationship with people that go to Starbucks that goes beyond just coffee. What I'm sharing on my screen are a couple of examples. Earlier, Starbucks had the interface that you see on the left, where again, you could share, you could vote, you could discuss. They had kind of a forum area where you go in, and you see right here how you want a Frappuccino is officially here. New highly energy efficient LED lighting coming to Starbucks near you. And then Sue Long posted that, right? So they've got these different posts people could do. Another thing that Starbucks transitioned to, they started asking for feedback on their receipt. And so on the back of the receipt, if you provided feedback, they gave you a reward. And for a while, you could get a whole cup of coffee. And then later, it kind of reduced down to if you give some feedback, you get $1 off your next purchase. Those are great approaches, right? Those are efforts that Starbucks really made, again, to try to get people to give them feedback and help them develop, again, that relationship with their customers. I think to some degree, what they have found and what we found overall is that that approach maybe got a little too common. I mean, you go to Burger King and you find on the back of the receipt, same kind of thing. Please, answer our survey for a chance to win $50 or whatever. Incentives typically are really good at helping people have a desire to provide you feedback. But more often than not, the best feedback comes because you have, again, that culture where you want to understand, you want to know, you want their experience to be good. If you look at this next part, this other screen capture, you see that Starbucks has migrated to what they call submit your idea at starbucks.com. And you notice, what's your Starbucks idea? Revolutionary or simple, we want to hear it. But now it's an input form. Instead of, again, this other process where they had, again, maybe a little bit less control because it was more of a forum kind of a thing. Now they're asking you to submit your idea and they've got an input form for you to do that. But notice right here, one of the things that they indicate, oops, it's a little bit further down, I didn't capture it. One of the things that they indicate is that if you actually have a really good idea, there's a good chance that they'll actually share a revenue benefit with you. They'll pay you like a percentage for a really good idea, which is great. So again, keep those ideas coming. These companies want to hear from you. But even Starbucks can benefit from having social media analysts review key social media feeds. Again, listening costs money. It costs money for Starbucks to hire somebody who's a social media analyst to go out and say, okay, what's being said not on our website, but what's being said out on Facebook, everywhere else? What's being said on Reddit about Starbucks? That's the kind of thing that really, if you want to put your listening ears on and you want to have active listening as a part of what you do, you've got to go above and beyond, right? These easy paths to listening. So that was kind of step one again, right? Listening. Well, what is step two? Asking questions and then integrating. In his article about customer feedback tools for small business, Sig Uland identified 14 specific things, 14 things that were good feedback tools. Again, this is a link. I'm going to go ahead and just pull that up and then kind of share that here for a second. So I'm going to drag that over to the screen. I think that'll work. I think you're able to see this. Just scroll down, and we're not going to go through all of them. But the key here, as you see right here, feedback is essential in running a business. It tells you what's working and what's not. It provides you with fresh ideas on ways to improve your business. It gives you insight into needs of your customers. And then again, they're just 14 feedback tools that he has here. Suggestion box, that's something that's pretty common, right? It used to be, at least. You go into the hairdresser, you go into Costco, and there'd be a suggestion box and a little pad of paper and a pencil that you could pick up and leave a suggestion. My wife and I have actually had success with that at Costco. There was a certain kind of Land of Lakes hot chocolate that we liked, and they had it for a while and then they quit carrying it. We put it in the suggestion box and talked about, hey, we really appreciated that product, we liked it, and then a couple of minutes later they started carrying it again, and we thought that that worked out pretty well. Again, a virtual suggestion box is something that you can put on your website. Again, a lot of other tools here: get satisfaction, feedback, something or another, user voice, user echo. Again, I'm not going to keep that open, but just something. Again, there are tools available. You don't have to be operating, again, in a vacuum. There are ways to get that feedback as you need it. The key is to integrate the concept of relationship into the core of your business model. That's what the integrate means. When you integrate that relationship, that need for feedback and mechanisms to get that feedback, that's when, again, you're reaching that next level. And most of the feedback tools rely on external feedback loops. Again, that social media and Facebook. One of the ones that I leverage a lot personally is Amazon reviews. and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but the ability for people to like and give it thumbs up, 1 thumb, 5 thumbs, stars, whatever, it really helps me in my consumer experience. That third step that we talked about, asking questions and then actually utilizing the information that you get to improve your product. Mecam is an example of where this really is something that we can look at as an example. Mecam is basically a $50 always on video camera. You see it on this person's chest here. You just basically clip it to your clothes. In some way, it's kind of like uh, the cameras the policemen wear, right? From the standpoint that it's always on. Well, with a Mecam, if you're out with your kids or your whatever it is you're doing, again, rather than having it turn on, turn off, etc., having it on your head or whatever, again, the Mecam provided a very low cost way. We're all familiar with the GoPro, and GoPros are about 10 times this cost, right? To be able to have something that's low cost, this particular person felt like the inventor of the Mecam felt like this was something that was more affordable, more reachable for most people. And so he bootstrapped this product and he created an MVP. I'm sure you're familiar with the MVP. That means minimally viable product. We're going to talk about that actually more in a minute. But what is the MVP that he could build to keep the price low? He listened to his customers and then he provided this particular product. It's the button size, battery. I mean, it still has basically a fairly good battery, but it's small enough that you can just put it on your chest again. But he didn't add an LCD screen so that you could see what was being taped. Oh, why didn't he do that? Well, the point of integration really is all about, again, asking these questions and then utilizing the information so that you can improve your product. And we learned that as we incrementally improve our products, as we listen to the feedback that we get from those incremental improvements, that's really where that mindset of listening and integrating customer feedback really comes into play. So Drew Martin, the inventor of the Mecam, I'm going to read his quote here, but he said the hardest thing to do is to take any criticism in a positive way. As humans, I think we all feel that, right? I recently had an experience at work where one of my coworkers had pointed out that in a particular meeting, I had asked a question that the answer to the question related to a different project. In other words, a different part of the project. It related to this one as well, but it had already been answered. And not being as technical, perhaps, as the rest of the project team, I thought that it was important to ask this question, and so that we could all kind of fit the answer into our perspective. And anyway, the feeling was that by asking this additional question, it exacerbated the length of, again, this meeting, and that it kind of led us down a side path that was maybe less important than the topic at hand. So that criticism was I think well-intentioned perhaps, but rather than bringing it to me directly so that I could talk about it and learn from that, instead they went directly to my manager and said, hey, Reme's kind of gumming up the works. We get that he's a project manager, but he's kind of taking us down some tangents and basically based this what it felt like to me at least, base this feedback on this one experience. And as humans, again, we hear something like that, it feels like criticism. If you're the inventor, if I'm the inventor of the Mecam and somebody says something about it, well, dude, it doesn't have an LCD screen. I could take that wrong, right? I could take that very negatively. How do we turn those around into a very positive way? Well, in my particular case, it wasn't a week later, and somebody came to me again on a different project and said, "Hey, Reme, I really, really take exception to something that this person just did. I really feel like they treated us very badly. It was totally inappropriate, And so I'm coming to you so that you can go and talk to them. And I said, well, first off, I'm not their manager, so I'm the project manager, and they don't report to me in a functional way. But may I share with you an experience that I just had? And I shared with them how I felt when a person who had some criticism that could have been constructive for me went to my manager instead of coming to me directly. And this person took that and said, wow, I totally see where you're coming from. And so as a result of that, rather than going to this person's manager, which again would have been like at a director level, instead they went to them and spoke to them one-on-one and they worked it out. Again, that's listening to your customers. That's listening in my case, right? I have a customer. I try to put that feedback loop out there. As a project manager, I ask regularly, are there things that I could do better? Is there something that um, in the way that I run my meetings that I could change? Is there something that I could do that would make the way that I manage our daily stand-ups a little bit better? I ask those questions regularly, so it even makes it um, more difficult, right, to accept when somebody skips that opportunity and goes to your manager. But again, I turn that into a very positive event by being able to share that experience with somebody else and change the way that they approached it. So I got off on a big tangent. Going back to Drew, his comment was, I could always have replied, well, hey, this is a $50 video camera. What do you expect? But he didn't do that. You really risk, and I'm again going to read his quote here, but then you risk losing that customer forever, and your product and service will never improve. And I think that's also somewhat true, right, of relationships. Again, whatever role you're in, if we don't listen, we risk ruining our relationship. If you instead acknowledge that the shortcomings and then actually go out and improve on them, then you might have a customer for life. Steve Jobs always understood his Apple products. Rather than overselling them, he undersold them because he knew what products he had. He knew what the advantages were going to be to his customers. And when he undersold them, it was always a surprise. You bought your new, again, iPhone 6, or I know they're on 11 now, but you bought your iPhone 6. And you were like, what? It does this? Or your new iPhone watch, right? I mean, to just have that level of, again, elation that it did more than you thought it was going to do. What a great, uh, what a great experience for your customer. Again, George, do we have any other questions?
Well, we have one question that says, I think this is brought about by your story with the LCD or lack of it. Said, was it because it was a first release minimum viable product? And I think you're answering a little different question and talking about the listening, but it's somebody was curious about whether it was just because it was a first release.
Well, that is a good question. And so I did put a link to the Mecam product. That Mecam still is available. The $50 version, which was their first release, is still available, but they have come out with another version. It actually looks more like a GoPro, and it does actually have an LCD screen on it. It does kind of bridge that gap between the $50 product and the $400 GoPro, and I think it's in the $200, $250 price range. So there is, again, a next product, a next iteration that did bridge that gap. But rather than go directly to that as his MVP, he recognized that that wasn't going to be his best approach. He needed first to, again, develop a customer base, address the initial market that he had identified, and then build upon that. And that actually leads us right into this next piece, really, as we talk about cost considerations and cost benefit analysis. What would business leaders like to know? So back to your question, did he put an LCD screen on it? Not initially, right? It took him actually a couple of years to get to that point, but rather he started with that minimally viable product. That's actually our next slide, and so we'll get into more information about that. But what would managers like to know? Three things I believe they would like to know are, number one, what quality should each feature include? and how will that address our demographic? So again, know your customer. The only way to know your customer is to identify them and then go through that process of asking them, what is it that you want? When we were talking about, again, introductions, one of the things that I failed to share is that I've been involved with product development for some years. In fact, again, I've been an entrepreneur. We did mention that, but what you didn't know potentially is that for 8 years, I actually ran the Idaho Inventors Group. We were based here in Boise. We had people that came from various different areas. Some people would drive from Star and Mountain Home, etc. We had some virtual meetings where people would come from other parts of the state as well. We had some good partnerships with the Innovation Lab at BSU and ISU. We actually met down at the water cooler, which is a business gestator that's since moved out to Meridian. But anyway, for 8 years, I focused specifically on helping people bring new products to market. I have several patents myself. I've written dozens of patents, help people with patent reviews and those kinds of things. And throughout that process, the fundamental question was always, you've got a great idea. I mean, this is really a great idea. This could make you $1 million, right? Everybody has $1 million idea, but identify who your customer is going to be, narrow it down. Not even though obviously everybody drives a car, not everybody, just because you invented some new car gizmo, that doesn't mean that everybody that owns a car is your market, right? You've got to narrow it down, continually narrow that down. And there's no way you can do that without asking questions. So understand what that demographic is. Number 2, if we use a higher quality material or produce a more refined product, how will that change our market response? Again, back to the Mecam. What if you'd put that LCD screen on there? Well, clearly that LCD screen version, which he now does sell, is in the 200 price arena. What would have happened? He wouldn't have had a $50 product. He wouldn't have had a product that would have introduced people to the ability to, again, have an always on camera. And more than likely, if he'd gone directly to an LCD screen product, he probably as a company would never have made it. He never would have got the market share that he needed. And so again, that question of how refined does this product actually need to be? What quality of materials? And we go back to, again, the example about the mosquito net. The mosquito device, if they had launched their product initially directly out of China, they never would have had $70 million in revenue a year. They wouldn't have got to that point. They would have had a product that would have failed immediately because of quality issues. So, I mean, understanding, again, that quality and what's expected of quality, that Steve Jobs vision of what the customer really wants and what you can price your product for because of that quality, the only way you can know that is by knowing who your customer is. The third one, does Made in America or corporate responsibility affect our ability to address our chosen demographic? So again, going back to Apple as an example, or Starbucks as an example, I mentioned with Starbucks, they again have this unique ability to really connect with their customer base. They connect on ways that, again, revolve around kind of their social ideals, not just their coffee. And understanding who your customer is allows you to do that. And more often than not, we see the younger generation, and again, not to give away my age, but the younger generation, in their 20s and 30s, they seem by and large to be very socially conscious. And so if you've got a company, again, and I'm just going to throw some rough examples out there, but if I sell shoes and it seems like I'm very profit driven, or if I sell shoes and every time you buy a pair of shoes, I'm going to give a pair of shoes away to someone in need, in that 20 to 30 age group, more often than not, those people are going to buy shoes from the company that's going to give away a pair of shoes than a company that seems like they're just in it for money. So again, understanding that about your demographic is really, really important. How would knowing information like this help you in what you do? How would this help you as a project manager? How would this help you as a functional manager? How would this help you as a customer service rep, right? How understanding all three of these things, I think, could be very instrumental in whatever it is that you do. George, do we have more?
No new questions at this point.
Okay. Let's talk about minimally viable product. You've heard of MVP before. Certainly in the sports world, that stands for most valuable player. I would say that most valuable player also could apply, right? When we start talking about products, we start talking about services. Our most valuable product, our most valuable service is something that typically starts out as our MVP, our minimally viable product, and then we grow that product line as we listen to our customers and understand what it is they want. Throughout my career of developing, delivering, and supporting products and services, I've found that success always invariably starts with that MVP. Every company, new and old, starts down the road to profitability or failure with the same essential start, an initial product. The problem is that if they don't get that initial product right, if they haven't characterized that initial product as an MVP, more than likely they're going to fail. So an MVP really is a product or a product line's Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, right? Kind of a thing. God created the world. Well, it took him 6 more days, right, to refine the world. And we have to go through that same process. That Genesis moment, that product is usually somewhat featureless. It's not till we've listened to our customer that we've decided, okay, which features are the most important to put in it next. And as, again, in an agile environment, this is something that we do every day. As we build products and again, software, whatever it is that we're building through an agile approach, it's an iterative approach where we, again, build a little something, we demonstrate it. We build upon that, we demonstrate it again. We build upon that, we demonstrate that. That iterative approach is really something that, again, this MVP approach, this theory of having a minimally viable product, it really leans on that. Most people believe that they have a great idea. Everybody does. I've got this great idea. But most people don't know what it takes to be successful. According to AccuPoll, 95% of new products fail in the market. 95%. And you don't have to be new at it to fail. McDonald's, for example. Everybody knows the McDonald's story to some degree or another, right? The Kircher brothers. They came out with this idea of hamburgers have been around for a long time, right? They came out with this approach of saying, okay, having hamburgers and having a hamburger stand is one thing, but being able to cookie cutter that hamburger stand in such a way that no matter where you go, if you step into the McDonald's front door, you know with certainty that what you order is going to be exactly the same in Los Angeles, California, as it would be in New York, New York. When you walk through that door, the product will be the same. The experience will be the same. That's what McDonald's built their global empire on, that consistency. They identified what they believed their customers wanted. They tailored their product and their experience to that, and then they didn't deviate from it. Or did they? Well, they actually tried. The McDonald's Arch Deluxe is a really good example of where that happened. So if we go back and we look at the basic McDonald's hamburger, that minimally viable product, that basic hamburger has not changed ever. It's the same. They built upon that original single burger, and they came out with, as we all know, the Big Mac, right? They listened to their customers. Well, we'd like to have lettuce. Well, we'd like to have we'd like to have two patties. We'd like to have extra cheese, etc. Right? So they kept building on that by listening to their customers. But even a company like McDonald's can get it wrong. What they ultimately did with the McDonald's Arch Deluxe is that they stopped listening at one point. Somebody high up in their marketing decided, you know what? as a company, in order for us as McDonald's chain to increase our revenues, we need to change what people think about McDonald's. We need to have people think of McDonald's not as your typical run-of-the-mill fast food chain. We want them to think of us as an upscale dining experience. And so they thought, well, if we change the architecture inside of our McDonald's, maybe some of the architecture on the outside, if we come out with a new product, the Arch Deluxe, a new hamburger that is an upscale hamburger, then people will begin thinking of us instead of as fast food. They'll think of us as, again, an upscale dining experience where they want to bring their family for evening meals, not just a drive-through experience. And they failed. They failed miserably. They spent $100 million on ad campaigns trying to get their demographic, customers that they already had, to believe that they were something that they weren't, something else that they wanted to be. They had this mindset of build it and they will come. And not only did they build it and they didn't come, but they built it and customers they already had were alienated and didn't want to come anymore. And so they quickly realized that they not only spent $100 million on ad campaigns that they just threw away, but they threw away untold millions on developing the Arch Deluxe, untold millions on changing the aesthetics inside their restaurants and external architecture as well. If you go to a McDonald's today, what do you find? You find a McDonald's basically that has been the same for 30 years, right? That whole Arch Deluxe idea went totally out the window. So as we talk about minimally viable product, what does that really mean? We're talking about you have products that you can build, you have products that people actually want, and then you have crappy products that nobody wants at all. And finding that Venn diagram, right? Finding that sweet spot in the middle is what you want to launch with. That's your minimally viable product. George, do we have any questions, comments?
No, nothing new has come in.
Okay. Well, we're getting towards the end of my presentation, actually. I wish we really could open up to the point where we could have vocal interaction, because I think this would be much better and probably much more useful to you. But please go ahead and continue putting in questions or comments. We want to, again, be as interactive as this technology will allow us to be. But I want to share, as we do that, some tools that we can use. I want to share a personal experience that I've had. And again, in the next 30 minutes that we have, kind of go through again this last slide. So I don't have a lot of other slides. A lot of it will just be me kind of sharing experience. But again, that's why this opportunity to ask questions would be very, very helpful to me as well. So some customer engagement best practices. The first one that I wanted to put on here is customer feedback. So customer feedback loops. These are the most common. And again, we talked about some of them already. Starbucks was a good example. Being able to put stars at Amazon on products that you purchase, or on, again, eBay or whatever. But I don't know if you know this, but if you recognize and drill down in, not only do you have the opportunity to put a response or apply basically a review right of the product that you purchase, but there's also an opportunity to review the seller on Amazon. And so you can say, yeah, this product was great, I loved it. Or this product was horrible. It came, it's really chintzy, it broke, it actually came in the packaging already broke, or it broke after the first time I tried to use it. But I reached out to the seller and they immediately made good on it. They immediately sent me a replacement. They upgraded me to the next model, which doesn't suffer from any of those issues, right? That's the kind of thing that, again, would be great for people to understand and hear. And it's that feedback, again, that customer feedback loop, that you give them that opportunity to let you know, not only was the product good, but your customer service was great. Reaching out to you was simple. I really appreciate that. you sent the replacement lickety split. I really appreciate that. I got it in 2 days, right? Other ways to get customer feedback is through samples. I don't know if all of you have seen this, but with the COVID-19 and us kind of being, again, sequestered in our homes to some degree, um, Taco Bell, which I don't frequent too much anymore. I used to go there a lot as a kid when I was a teenager. I don't go there as often anymore, but I did go there a couple times recently, and guess why? Because on Tuesdays they were giving away a free Doritos Loco whatever taco. And so we go in to the drive-through, we get our free taco, and then order several other obviously menu items. It wasn't a sample per se. It was kind of I think Taco Bell's way of saying, hey, we appreciate you as customers. We recognize we're all kind of holed up, but we'd like to give you an opportunity to get out of the house and come visit us, right? That's a good mechanism. That's a good way to again elicit a response. And
We have
again
one
get some feedback.
question come through.
Thank you. Please.
All right, yeah, this is one, Valerie has sent a few already, but this is the first time we get a chance to talk about it with everybody. Her question is, what do customers want from St. Luke's during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Oh, Valerie, that's a really, really good question, probably deeper than I'm even qualified to answer. Let me tell you a couple things that St. Luke's has done that I think will help with that. Number one, St. Luke's has tried to do a very, very good job of communicating. One of the things that they recognize is that from a leadership standpoint, so all the way up the food chain to our CEO, he recognizes that we as employees are customers, right? We have and have had for the last couple months a regular Friday 1 hour COVID-19 call where he explains, pardon me, where he explains what we're doing through the system, what actions we're taking, what changes we're making, et cetera, to keep everybody at St. Luke's in the loop. That 1 hour call is then posted on our, we have a SharePoint site that's company-wide, 15,000 employees all can access what we call the source. And so we can go to the source and then again, view those interviews. A similar thing is done externally as well for all of our patients. And so whether you're a patient at St. Luke's or not, you can go to our website and you can find where we've got information that we are sharing out on a regular basis on what we're doing, what changes we're making, etc. I think that customers, by and large, want a couple things. So I gave you that background to help you understand that, again, this is not an area that I actually work in. I have not done any work that's directly related to COVID-19, although lots of people that I work with obviously have. But just getting feedback from, again, those meetings that we've had and the feedback that we share out as a system. Some of the things that I see, number one, is that patients want to know that they're going to be safe when they come to the hospital. So if I'm coming and I've got something, I don't even know what it is. If I come to the hospital because I just broke my leg, or I'm feeling congested, or maybe my heart's pitter-pattering a little too fast, am I at risk for coming into contact with COVID-19? Am I at risk? I think that's one of the things that patients want to know. And so good customer service, again, understanding that, and then helping our patients understand if they're at risk or not, and what steps we're taking to make sure that they're not at risk, I think is very helpful. On a similar note, if I'm coming to visit a patient, so my wife's in, a recovery or something, she had surgery, or maybe she has COVID-19, and I'm coming to visit, what expectations can I have, again, that I'm going to be protected? And then what are the restrictions? What can I bring? Can I bring my children? I mean, those are, again, the expectations, I think, by and large, are our patients just want to know. So it's really a question of knowledge. The third one, I think, really is, and it's knowledge as well, but a lot of our elective procedures we canceled. Again, we took the resources that would have been helping people with, again, elective procedures and concentrated those same resources specifically on addressing COVID-19. They want to know, well, when will those procedures now be available again? When can I start coming back? And then when I come back, what will be different about my experience? So, Valeria, I'm not sure that I'm answering your question perhaps in the way that you wanted, but that's about as deep as I can get because, again, I'm not really in that area. But you can see just from being an employee at St. Luke's, I do have some perspective, and I think that's really important. Again, it's that mentality of making sure that you understand that even within your organization, everybody is a consumer, everybody is a customer. George, do we have more?
We have another question. And this one's from Jennifer Fiscella. And it's a little longer question, so let's see if we can tie it all together. Our organization is in the process of developing a new global IT system using Scrum methodology. We're about half complete in the project and are trying to encourage additional users or stakeholders to begin sampling the product in the test environment and provide feedback. Do you have a recommendation for an effective and creative, engaging way to reach out to these stakeholders and solicit the feedback other than just an email?
Yeah, I think I do actually. I'll share super briefly because it's actually on my slide right here. But Jennifer, I'd be happy to have you reach out to me externally as well, because what you're asking is going to be an hour-long conversation by itself. But let's chat a little bit about the next piece on here, which is focus groups. I love focus groups. I've been involved with them as a consumer, as well as from the other side of it. Again, working for several years with other inventors, again, with new businesses looking to do a startup with a new product. The first thing is, if you can bring a group of people together that represent your demographic and have them look and use the product in front of you, where you're able to observe their reactions, observe the discussions that they have one with another, and then be able to ask questions while they're in front of the product, that is phenomenal if you can do that. And so this is a really good way of doing that. Within Scrum, by the way, and Agile in general, what you typically have are two key things. One is a retrospective where your development team actually gets together and they talk about what could they do to improve their processes, what can they do to improve their relationships within the team itself, what can they do to improve their methodologies, et cetera, communication within the team, all those kinds of things, right? And that happens at the end of every sprint, every 2 weeks. So that's that continual process improvement mentality. Well, aligned with that is also a demonstration of what they've produced. So that retrospective is internal, it's the team only. They expand that meeting and now they invite their stakeholders, they invite their consumers to come and meet with them again. And in that meeting, they actually demonstrate what they built or they demonstrate their product. And in that situation, it's basically a focus group. We're basically saying, okay, this is what we've developed for you up to this point. Try it, use it. Here, grab the mouse. It's your turn. You drive. And as they go through that process, again, you can see the reaction. You can hear their comments. Oh, well, I wish that the C was a lowercase c, or why isn't this, why doesn't it pop out better? I mean, if this was all in yellow, it would pop out to me, right? Why is this picture so small? How come the AirPods are all white? If they were, could I get AirPods in blue? I mean, that kind of feedback is pretty invaluable. So again, I'd love to chat about that more, Jennifer, if you want to reach out to me at another time. But again, focus groups are great. I want to be conscious of our time. We've got about 15 minutes left. And so let me share a focus group experience that I had. I used to live in Sacramento, California, and they had an area down there that you could sign up to be basically a panelist on focus groups. And they looked at your demographic. So they looked at how many kids you had. By the way, I had 6. They looked at what your income was. And by the way, at the time, I was in the 6 digits. They had part of their demographic was where you lived, and I lived on a golf course. They had a demographic of what kind of car you drove. I drove a BMW. They had a demographic on what ages your kids were. With 6 kids, I had kids that were as young at that time as 2, I think, and as old as like 18. So anyway, somewhere in there. Anyway, with that, I fit a lot of demographics. And so they reached out to me all the time saying, hey, could you come and participate in this focus group or that focus group? And it could be everything from, and literally was, corn dogs on a stick, right? To diapers, to, in this particular case I want to share with you, was about pizza. And so they literally asked, they got this group together and they asked us to go to different pizza parlors and film our experience from walking in the door to ordering our pizza to eating our pizza to going home to filming the ride home even. And then they would get all of their focus group participants together in a room. We actually hosted it at our house and they asked us to do that. So it would be, again, a little bit different experience. So it was more more of a cottage meeting kind of a thing where all the participants, we weren't at an office, so we'd be more comfortable just speaking as parents about our experience. It went very well. Ultimately, at the end of this particular experience, it turned out that it was, we found out what pizza company it was. We didn't know all the way through the experience until the very end. And then we found out that it was Round Table Pizza. And they were investigating building a new roundtable experience, kind of like what McDonald's did, but I think McDonald's failed to do this. They failed to go through this process. And Roundtable ultimately decided to only adopt a few of the suggestions we had, but what they did was they didn't launch a whole nother restaurant experience. Instead, they took a lot of the feedback that we had and just improved the restaurants that they experienced that they already had, just incrementally improved them. And then ultimately, I got $1,500 for my participation, and then I went out and bought a camera that I took with me to London on a vacation. So that's part of focus groups, is that people have some expectation of, again, getting a little something back for their feedback, because ultimately you've put them on the payroll to give you good feedback. And again, I love focus groups. They work really well. The next one, and again, just be considerate of our time, we've got about 11 minutes left, is direct field contact. So focus groups are great, right? When you can get them all into a room and you can kind of have a controlled environment. When you go into the field, it's an uncontrolled environment, and nothing's better than that. You see the people, you see your customers in their own environment, doing what they do every day. And again, that's really a business analyst. This is where they live. This is what they want to do, right? And so if you have the opportunity to observe your customers out in the wild where they're doing what they do, that's a really good place to do that. And a tool that we like to use is called the 5 Whys. You're probably familiar with this, especially those that have kids. Your child asks you, why is the sky blue? Then you answer, well, there's oxygen in the air, there's ozone in the air. Ozone actually is a layer of gas that sits above. It's in the inner atmosphere, just right at the edge, and it actually blocks a lot of the UV rays that come from the sun. Where does ozone come from? Well, now you start going into that, right? Well, and I'm going to be a little bit humorous here, but well, cows fart, and cows fart methane, and methane goes up in the air. And anyway, right. So not to say that ozone comes from methane, but just thought it'd be humorous. But that's the kind of thing, right? We keep asking more questions, more questions, more questions, and we need to do that with our customers. We should never stop with that first question. So how was your experience on your PMI Western chapter discussion today? Okay, well, that doesn't get us very deep, does it? Let's say that Jennifer answers and says, well, it was pretty good, but I sure wish I could have responded. I could have actually said something. Okay, what's the next logical question? what kind of questions, Jennifer, would you have asked? That would be good to know. And then she responds, well, it would have been really nice that when we were talking about customer engagement best practices, if I could have asked more about, are there other tools besides the 5 whys? Well, it would be a logical question from that. Well, why, Jennifer? Is there a specific thing that you're working on today that, again, other tools might be helpful with, right? So again, just continuing to go down that path of understanding more and more and more. And then let's say that Jennifer had answered, well, the next time I make an update to this slide deck, I might say, okay, 5 whys is not enough tools. I need another tool. And maybe I need 3 different tools in the direct field contact area. And so the next iteration of this product, if you will, would be more feature rich. It would have more information. And that's the kind of process that we want to go through to really make this work. George, any other questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple. Let's come back. One from Laura Quayer. What are some options for small businesses with limited budget for customer research?
That's such a good question. Absolutely. One of the things that I always like to do and recommend that you do is the first thing is identify what your product is or your service is, and then Google search it. So let's say that you have a brand new product, whatever it is. There is probably something similar out there in the market already. Research that product. Once you've researched and found a similar product, research the companies that sell that product. See what you can figure out that is making them successful, what's not making them successful, what's holding them back. Again, look for feedback on Reddit and, again, social media in general. Look in social media, see what you can find. Identify, again, areas where there are tangents to your product or your service. Clearly, there are going to be inventions that are completely, absolutely new, nobody's ever thought of before. But usually there's something that's similar, something that's a tangent to it that you could look at. If you can't find a direct tangent, then again, narrow down who your customer is specifically, and then try to understand what makes them tick and what their needs are, and then drive that direction to really understand, is your product going to, again, serve that need or not? I hope that helps a little bit. Again, I'm happy to help anybody at any time. Reach out to me directly if there's something more you'd like to discuss outside of this. Another question, George?
Yeah, we have several people that have listed questions that are more comments, some of them directed to you personally. So I think at this point, most of them we'd save for later.
Okay.
Comment by Valerie, though, is that SurveyMonkey is cheap, but you need email lists.
Yep,
And
that's true.
or you can place your survey on social media sites. So
Yeah.
some good comments on that. Most of the comments pass on to you offline.
Okay, thank you. And love constructive comments, so appreciate those. And by constructive, I mean if they're negative, that's okay too. I definitely want to learn from that, so absolutely appreciate any feedback. To that point, so one of the things that we try to do, and you've seen this before, you've gone to the grocery store or whatever, you saw somebody standing out front with a survey. You can go and let's say that your product is sports related. Most of my patents are actually sports related. But if you were standing outside of Cabela's, you could survey people about a new product. You wouldn't obviously be able to do that without their permission. And so you need to go and talk to Cabela's management, let them know that you're researching a new product, that even let them know that at some point your anticipation would be that it would be carried in a sporting goods store, and you'd love, if Cabela's could be your partner at some future date. Obviously, you're not asking for that at that point, but would it be okay if I just surveyed some people coming in and out of your doors about this new product, and then you show them again your script, what your questions are going to be? More often than not, you will get permission to do that. So again, how do you get that email list? Many times you're going to want to follow up with that initial survey because it's going to be short, it's going to be sweet. 3 questions is about key, right? So let's say your new product is a new bat, as an example. So your questions are going to be around things like, do you prefer metal bats, or wood bats, right? That would be one. Um, I don't really know anything about baseball, so is balance important? Is, I don't know what else to ask, but so 3 questions kind of is where you're going from that. You'd want people to you'd want to be able to reach out to them again. So your other question might be, could I get your email address? Would you be open to me sending you another short survey maybe in a couple of weeks that might be 4 or 5 questions that would follow up to this? And many people will say, yeah, hey, that's fine. Because again, you built a little bit of a relationship by having that one-on-one contact. That's one of those ways that you can begin building your SurveyMonkey email list. It is difficult to build an email list. I know that. And there are tools and mechanisms for that. I'd recommend that you search. The Better Business Bureau actually has some guidelines to that. The Small Business Development, SBA, Small Business Administration, Small Business Development arm, also have a lot of information about how to build that email list. So I'd recommend you look there as well. All right. Well, if there are any other questions.
We don't have anything on the list right now,
right.
so I think
we have 3 minutes left. Jen, do you want me to turn the time over to you?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I turned my microphone back on because I wanted you to be able to hear the laugh when you were saying something funny. You needed to hear the direct feedback because I was a little too late turning the microphone.
Oh, thank you for trying.
Thank you, Reme. I'm impressed because 42 attendees. Wow. We have not had a turnout like that. So I think this says, one, that all of you out there missed us terribly, and that the online format is good for now. So we'll see if things go back to normal, if this would be something maybe we entertain to make people have an easier time attending Lunch and Learn. That's going to be something on my mind. So I want to also direct your attention to the 2 documents that are located in the handouts. So you should have, I don't know where it is for you, but for me it's kind of to the right and separate, but there's a drop down smart menu and there's a handout section, and there are 2 documents. One, again, is how to do the PDUs, 1.5 credits. And then the other one is the PowerPoint slide deck that Reme used today. So you have access to that. And I think we might have someone lined up for June. And I think that is June 10th. That's what's going on through my mind. And I would believe at this time we would still have an online unless you hear otherwise. We haven't really confirmed that at this point, but I think it's safe to say we would do that right now. Okay, so thank you everybody for attending. Really appreciate it, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.